Youth Sports Network presents TouchDown Ontario with Devin Gilmore McNeil.
Welcome back to Touchdown Ontario, episode 3. We have a great panel of guests here joining us on this episode. Darren Stevenson from 5519 Sports, Russell Silverson is back with us, Jesse Card, and I'm Devin Gilmore McNeil. Fellas, let's just go around the horn. Obviously, football's thriving during the fall right now. You have the OFFL just starting last weekend, and obviously NCAFA in full stride. So just want to go around the horn and get everyone's thoughts. Darren, we'll start with you. Obviously, fall football is great. You have Waterloo, Guelph, Brantford, and Cambridge once again covering those teams. What's it like been for week one just finishing up?
It's so funny to think about how short the period is between the OSFL Summer Cup that we all did at Warrior Field about 3.5 weeks ago, and now we're already into the fall football. Yeah, last weekend, a couple of home games for the Cambridge Lions as well as the Waterloo Junior Warriors. So they kicked off their home schedule and their home seasons. Isn't it a great time of year? We've got OUA football, high school football starting soon. Obviously, you guys are touching on the OFFL stuff. The weather's still nice. It's still pretty good out there. And Cambridge picked up a couple of wins last weekend at the U12 and U14 level at Jacob Hespler. So they were certainly pretty happy. The one game was actually a really, really close ball game. The U14 game, Cambridge against the Oshawa Hawkeyes. Cambridge was up 13-12 late, and Oshawa went for a 2-point convert to win the game. No good. Lions win 13-12. So what a way to start the year for that U14 Cambridge Lions team. Oshawa got the touchdown. It was 13-6 to make it 13-12. Sometimes you gamble. Sometimes you take a chance. Unfortunately, it didn't pay off for the Hawkeyes in that situation. Fun ball game to be at. Fun ball game to cover. And hopefully lots more to come with the OFFL guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually got the opportunity, obviously, to do the voiceover for that, Darren, and just watching that game was incredible, and the excitement, and you could tell at the Jacob Hespler, people were excited for fall football, and what a game to kick off the season. You're absolutely right. Russell, we'll go to you. Were you able to catch any NCAFA action this past weekend, and what are your thoughts now that the both fall leagues are in full swing?
Sadly, I was not able to catch any games this weekend, but I did talk to a couple players. I checked out some of the standings in the games. And I have a couple storylines to touch on. First thing being, the Riders improved to 4-0. Officially have the most wins in the Bantam Division. 4-0. Obviously, the Raiders and the Panthers are 3-0. They haven't played their fourth game yet. But the Myers team looks really legit. And we were just talking about how last week the Panthers might be the top dog, but I would not count out the Riders. They've been playing very consistently good football. They're gonna have two tough matchups to end their season with against the Mustangs and the Raiders. So that'll be two games that really dictate their season standings wise. But right now they're looking like the best team in the league to me personally.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of good NCAFA action over the weekend to pair with the OFFL kicking off. Like we mentioned at the top, it's just the best time of year for fall football around the province. Darren mentioned the OUA. You got the NFL starting, right? You got the OFFL. You got the NCAFA, right? Everything's going on. Jesse, we'll throw it to you. What were your takeaways from this past weekend with two leagues getting going now?
Yeah, you said it. It's for football junkies like all of us. This is a good time of year. But this week, I was actually Friday night able to go. It was a rainy night, but I was out here in Canada. I saw the Pee Wees battle. Canada versus the Bell Warriors, and then again at Bantam. Some great games. That Pee Wee game came right down to the wire. Canada pulling it off. So the Pee Wee division, and especially now that we're provincially, involved, there's some high stakes here, and it's going to be fun to watch some of these 519 teams, shuffle along the power rankings weekly. But this adds so much more to these teams in Ottawa now that we're starting to see these other provincial teams come online. So overall great weekend. Lots of interviews with some of the younger kids playing football. Some interviews from the Orleans Bengals, the Bell Warriors, a young 6-year-old that was interviewed that's waiting for football to start for him. He's got 2 more years. He says he's got to wait before he can strap up the pads. But overall, I think things are going really well in the league, and Friday night's just around the corner. We're ready for another week.
Yeah, Jesse, and maybe we can just kind of touch on, with the OFFL starting this past weekend and the NCAFA in its fourth week of play. Why is it so important that those two organizations, to cover both of them in the same vein, why is it so important? I know we have the Fall Cup. Maybe you can kind of just break that whole system down for our viewers and the culmination of both leagues meeting each other later in November.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I'll also ask Darren to weigh in here. I mean, what happens is by putting fall football under the umbrella, there's lots of areas in the province, from what I understand in Toronto, that don't have community football. They a lot of times. The high schools are really dominant in Southern Ontario. We know that, right? And there's still quite a few high schools here in Ottawa, but there are pockets within the GTA, and other areas of Ontario where high school football isn't available for young people. So that's where the OFFL, the Ontario Fall Football League, steps in. Some of these associations that commonly play in this Ontario Summer Football League can stand up a program in the fall. And now the fact that these centers maybe aren't big enough to play each other and there aren't enough kids playing in those sectors, we can now make this a provincial league. And that's why Ottawa and NCAFA, we have over 2,000 kids playing tackle football here in the fall, can now compete with Oshawa down the line. I think the province is set to start to even evolve and innovate further, where we could start seeing an Nepean Eagles have one travel game in the fall to go down to play one of the OFFL teams. And that would be in addition to the Fall Cup champions playing each other. But this year, it's going to be in Ottawa a couple weeks after the NCAFA championships here, and it's exciting. Football is evolving, and it's getting more exciting in this part of the country.
I think everybody's coming together, right? And that's something that obviously we've all worked on as well at the different projects that we've worked together with 519 Sports and obviously you guys at TYSN. And it's great because it's growing. And I've been in Guelph the past couple of weeks. We've been doing some football previews just with like the local high schools there, in relation to the Guelph Minor Football Association and the Junior Griffins. And I've just had the opportunity to chat with people just about why is football in our little pocket, our little region, our little corner of the world, I guess you could call it. And it's the same thing there, right? Obviously, NCAFA is huge and generates huge interest in your area, but it's been really interesting to talk to a bunch of the different coaches that have been around Guelph football for a long time. I did some work with the Cambridge Lions, kind of just doing some promo work for their program. And it seems to really be on the rise. And the more that we can bring all these different stakeholders together to create huge championship games and maybe down the line even some rivalries, because you get some games that are close and that also develops into something else. That's only going to be great for the growth of football in the province. I think part of it as well is the coverage that we're providing here as well. You guys with TYSN and the stuff that you do with NCAFA. Obviously, we're in our little zone here in Waterloo Region, Cambridge, Guelph, and Brantford. But that only helps grow the game in those different places as well. So when those two forces come together, being the OFFL and the NCAFA, that's only going to be a great thing for Football Ontario and obviously for the kids. And that's really, really what the whole thing is about. We've talked about this before, guys. It's about these kids having experiences. It's about them loving the game. It's about having them stay being in love with the game. And I think the different things that are going on right now, the passion that we've got, the commitment that we've got from the coaches, I can't say enough about the coaches, and I'm speaking just in my area, and I know this is across the province as well, but I can't say enough about the coaches who work all day at their full-time jobs. They go to the field at night, and they spend hours drawing out game plans. They go over film. We're talking about U10, U12 football because they really want to teach the fundamentals, and they want these kids to understand the game so that when they move through the different age divisions in whatever association that they're in, they're learning the game, getting better at the game, both on the field and off the field. So that's one of the things I certainly want to say here is credit to all of these coaches who are putting in long hours, and I think that's going to also result in just the continued explosion, whether it's from a registration point of view, from a passion point of view, whatever that looks like, guys. I think that's really huge. So credit to the coaches for sure.
Yeah, and I would just add too that what we're seeing across the country, but in the province of Ontario, is that football is becoming a 12-month-a-year sport. And that's not in a bad way to say that kids shouldn't be trying other sports, but flag football starts kind of registration in January now. So to be able to really offer football opportunities all throughout the year, and have, parents and coaches being able to invest their time in these young, children and youth, is only a positive thing. I think we don't want youth to kind of hibernate on iPads all winter. So if we can get them out playing some flag, getting them ready for another tackle season, this is all good stuff.
And I think too, what I've seen locally here is the organizations. Guelph does one, Cambridge does one, Waterloo does one, where in those winter months, like the third week of January, they're having a combine, right? All it really is a skill development session. It doesn't matter though. It gets the kids on the field in the middle of the winter when it's minus 20 outside and it's a blizzard, and they're out there starting to think about football and just, get their legs moving, for the receivers, get their hands ready, like all that kind of stuff. You know what, guys, and you know this too with what you guys do. It feels like almost every sport has now become a 12-month-a-year thing, right? Obviously hockey dominates in our country and our province, but at the end of the day, like that's a 12-month thing now. Is that a bad thing? There's different pros and cons to that. But the more that football remains front of mind and front and center for people as they think about it, whether it's December or January, whether it's flag football inside, that's not a bad thing, because you know what? Honestly, football continues to grow, and the more exposure and the more the kids are on the field, the more they're going to fall in love with it.
Yeah, and I think those touch points, like you mentioned, Darren, the combine, it's also an opportunity for the parents to come out, right? Like, what you want football to be is yes, an activity for your children, but also it's a community building exercise for the adults, right? Getting together, all sharing the vision of providing these opportunities and mentorship to youth, and to having them, have some sort of, pro-social development activity, and the parents getting together just forms that cohesion of focusing on a common goal, and making your life a little bit more about the just, the immediate, what you're worrying about day to day, but rather something outside in the community that you're building together. So those are important during the winter too. And from what I've heard from a lot of parents is football, they're asking for more programming, right? They don't want the football associations just to go dark for 6 months. They want to have activities like these combines throughout the winter to keep everyone together and nurture those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely, fellas. Appreciate the insight on fall football and kind of the status of football in our province. Before we kind of wrap up and move on from the OFFL and let Darren go, I kind of wanted to touch on the Fall Cup specifically. Both of you guys were present at the Fall Cup, calling some games. I remember watching those games live, and they were just terrific. What do you think making it to the Fall Cup means for these programs, especially because it's the younger generation and they might not necessarily get to play high school football, obviously. So what does it mean for these clubs to make it to the Fall Cup and have that crossover with the GTA region and the Ottawa region? What do you guys think?
Well, I'll just say that I feel like when you don't know much about your opponent, there's always a little bit of cachet with that. The fact that you're seeing Cambridge on the leaderboard, on the power rankings, the junior Warriors, Oshawa has started to build a reputation for the Fall Cup, right? We've seen them play Cornwall, we've seen them play Cumberland. That's exciting, and I think for the parents and the players, it's exciting to step outside of your immediate region and start seeing some competition coming from other places that maybe you've never even traveled to as a kid. So for the fact that it's in Ottawa, like, I think I'm really excited to see these games and contribute, and root on these Ottawa teams, being kind of an Ottawa kid.
You got to be rooting on the Cambridge Lions, the Brantford Bisons, the Guelph Junior Griffins, and the Waterloo Junior Warriors, Jesse. That's all there is to it, buddy.
So Darren, really appreciate your time. Before we let you go, I just kind of wanted to touch on some of the matchups this weekend that we have, some of the home openers. I know Guelph on Sunday is welcoming in their first opponent for their home opener. And then I
Yeah.
also seen Friday night, Waterloo is welcoming in Vaughan at U14, so that should be a great game. Get your final thoughts on the teams that you're covering and the season as a whole.
It's gonna be fun. Friday night lights, right? The U14 Warriors playing under the lights at a local high school here, St. David High School in Waterloo. Get their season going, see what they look like. It's a little bit early in the season to kind of start navigating, who's in the mix and who's not in the mix, kind of thing. But I'm excited to get out there and just take a look at the teams and kind of get a feel for where they're at. You talk about the Guelph Junior Griffins. What a great summer season they had at the OSFL level, having numerous teams in those championship games that we did at Warrior Field and Waterloo. Obviously, the U18's coming up a little bit short in that Friday night game. But like I was saying, that Guelph football, man, that is on the rise in that U14 squad that we covered also that ended up winning that championship there in Guelph. So lots of exciting things in Guelph. They have a triple header on Sunday as they kind of get their season rolling. And lastly, Lions Day. The Cambridge Lions, with each season, whether it's OSFL, OFFL, doesn't matter what it is, they always have a Lions Day where all the teams are playing at home, and they got a barbecue going, and they got the old signage up, and they got an announcer, and they got the music blaring. So it's always a fun day. Jacob Hespler and the Lions have all these teams at home on Lions Day, and certainly looking forward to being there on Sunday as well. Brantford Bisons haven't played any home games yet, but that will certainly be in our future. There's nothing quite like being at Bison's Alumni Field with their announcer, Matt Dean, who's yelling, move those sticks. And honestly, so much buzz, so exciting. We also got OUA Laurier Western this Saturday at University Stadium in Waterloo. Golden Hawks 2-0. Western hasn't lost. Rematch of the Yates Cup. And then next week, locally here in the area, the high school football starts. Waterloo Public, Waterloo Catholic, District 10 in Guelph, and then the AABHN, which is the Brantford Association. They get going next week. So I don't know how many football games I'm going to cover in the next 2 or 3 months before I see you guys in Ottawa, but I'm going to put it well over 100. So can't wait. Let's go, guys. Let's have a great season.
Well, hey, always.
Yeah, and on that note too, the Ottawa high school football starting too, so we'll keep tabs on
For
that
sure.
along the way too.
Yeah,
So
no,
definitely.
Darren, just want to say always great work, and I also wanted to encourage everyone, obviously, to go check out 519 Sports Online if you haven't, but specifically, I want you to check out the Lions Den show that I've seen you guys have been doing. That's been great stuff, covering Cambridge more in-depthly. I've loved watching that as a fan. But Darren, I just wanted to, on behalf of the TYSN team, thank you for joining us this morning, and have a great season of football. Over 100-plus games, like you said, so we're excited to watch it all.
See you, fellas. Can't wait to keep this train going down the tracks and see you guys soon. Great work with TYSN as always, and look forward to our continued partnership.
All right, so we really want to thank Darren for joining us, and now, fellas, we can really dive into NCAFA specifically. We've touched on the OFFL starting this week and the crossover between these two organizations, but let's dive deep into NCAFA. Russell, you touched on it earlier, some great matchups this past weekend. One of the matchups I kind of want to lead off with is that Bantam undefeated matchup that happened over the weekend. The Gloucester South Raiders taking on the South Ottawa Mustangs, beating them 10-8 in a battle of unbeaten. Neither team had more than 10 points scored on them all season. This Bantam division, especially with those two teams showing how close it is between the top 4 or 5. What are your guys' thoughts after that 10-8 victory for the Raiders over the weekend?
I thought it was incredible. I mean, it was a matchup. Both teams hadn't allowed points scored against them all season. So we knew one of these streaks were going to break, or both the streaks were going to break. And in this case, both the streaks were broken. 10-8, super close, tight defensive matchup. It was incredible. I mean, how often do you see a 10-8 football game, right? And losing by 2 points, that's insane. I'm sure when these teams meet again, it's going to be another tight, heavy matchup. It's going to be incredible. This matchup was great, and I can't wait to see these two teams play again.
Russell, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Out of Cumberland, South Ottawa, Gloucester South, and what's the other one I'm missing that's undefeated? Myers, right? Who's your pick of the litter out of those 4 teams? Who's your favorite as we head into Week 5?
That's tough. There's a lot of different variables that go into it. The Panthers, most points scored, undefeated. But like I said last week, they haven't really played one of the top teams yet. And then you look at Gloucester South and you look at the Mustangs. They've played each other, and we saw how close it was. But I don't think the Raiders winning really means that the Mustangs are out of competition, like that they couldn't win, right? Because it's such a close match. That game could have gone either way. And the Riders, they haven't played either Cumberland or Mustangs or the Raiders, but they've played better teams. They've played teams who have won games. So it's kind of tough to look at it. But I mean, if I had to take my pick right now, I would probably pick the Riders. They are 4-0 right now. They've played the most consistently good football. They've had struggles, they've had challenges. It's not like they're coming in every week and just blowing out, 80-0. They've had teams score against them. They've had challenges and diversity to overcome, and that's why I'm going to pick the Riders.
Yeah, going through adversity, right? I mean, that does add to your football team throughout the season. Whenever you have those tough, close battles, it really does add some character to your team. I mean, I know as a former football player, when you win a game by one score and it's a physical game, I mean, that really builds the culture of your team and makes you a better team overall. Jesse, I'm going to put you on the spot. What are your thoughts on kind of the four-headed monster at Bantam right now?
I love Bantam. The top four we're talking about a lot, but I'm equally interested in looking at some of the teams that are at the bottom of those standings, because there's some real shining stars that are playing on these teams, and I want to spend the rest of the season getting to know, seeing some of these games and being able to talk about a few of these athletes on these teams. When it comes down to playoff football, I mean, those top four juggernauts are going to be fun. I think the 8-10 score between the Raiders and the Mustangs is great for the season. It gives both teams the opportunity now to like know where they stand and to reset and adjust. And we talked about that last week in terms of at the varsity level, it's about coaching, and that's what we're really watching. The same thing at Bantam, right? Not many of these teams have film. That's something that I would really think that this league needs to get to, is to have film on the Bantam and Pee Wee games, like film for every single game. But in the absence of having film to analyze with the team and to share with the other teams, it's going to come down to making those adjustments. And I just think that is anybody's league right now with those top four. Cumberland, we talked about last week, being maybe that's a liability, not having the competition throughout the season. So that could be something where, like you said, the Raiders or the Mustangs having a few of these tough games, that they squeak out, that could actually play into their advantage during those A Cup playoff games. And I think there's nothing that I would be surprised at this season at that Bantam level. And I'll just add too about Kempville. The facilities look amazing. Both both the board and the executive at Kempville put a lot of pride into their facilities, their field. They've got lights that they put in. And the community is responding. They hosted a movie night a couple weeks ago, and like the community comes out to these games. So if you get a chance to go out to Kempville for some of these home games, go check out the scene out there. It's really, football is building really rapidly in Kempville. And, you mentioned it, like the smaller, newer organizations. How exciting is it for Kempville and the players and the coaches there to be competing with some of the big clubs in Ottawa? That's something that club can really grow the sport out in that area, to the point where, maybe we're seeing a Kempville Jaguars win an A Cup at a level or two here in the future. Now, I will say here, just as a little side deviation, I've been also tracking the Quebec Bantam Football League online. I've been looking at the midget football league in Montreal and the surrounding area, and we know that at the Fall Cup, we only have up to Pee Wee. So there's a pretty thriving Bantam and varsity league. Years ago, the league NCAFA partnered with this Montreal City Football League, and we had the Interprovincial Bowl. So I'm just putting that out there online right now. Is like, why aren't the Bantam Championships for NCAFA playing the champion of the Quebec Football League this fall as part of the Fall Cup? Over to you
Yeah,
guys.
no, absolutely. Doing that in the past, just seeing that in the past was always awesome. Whenever, we do have the Fall Cup, which is a great event, whether it's in Ottawa or in the GTA. But it would be nice to see these varsity and bantam teams play somebody from Quebec and get a rivalry brewing again in those levels. Because like you said, we used to do that before with NCAFA. You were a big part of that, Jess. So it'd be nice to get that back and see these bantam teams. I know a couple years ago, the Fall Cup, whenever it was COVID year, the Fall Cup actually included the Bantam and varsity teams playing like Essex and London and stuff, and that was really cool. Obviously, that was a different time period in life, but yeah, we'd love to see that. But moving on from Bantam, gentlemen, Jesse, I wanted to get your thoughts on the game you got out to on Friday, the Pee Wee game between the Bell Warriors and Canada Knights. Canada Knights winning that game 20-18. Seen a lot of great interviews after that game. What a game! Being there firsthand, you and Wanda Keenan grabbing all the content. What were your thoughts after that great game on Friday night?
Yeah, it's just a really cool scene right now. Like one of the busiest intersections I think in Ottawa is becoming Hazeldean and Terry Fox out in Canada. That's right where that field is, Bob Barr Field, named after the longtime community builder for the Canada Knights. The Hall of Fame recently, Bob Barr. And we got cars lined up Hazeldean, kind of parked like somewhat on the sidewalk because the parking lot's full. They've got two big stands full of people watching these kids play, and the lights are on. So it's a really good scene that's developing for football out here. In terms of the game, like Bell Warriors, Canada Knights, it doesn't get much better than that rivalry. The territories are butted up against each other, and we got to see a really good game. Two undefeated teams. It went right down to the wire, and actually Canada's running back and linebacker, this kid is pretty special. I got to talk to a few of the Canada parents. He came from the OSFL Myers team, and this kid is special. So we did do a quick interview with him on Friday night, and it has like 5,000 or 4,000 views already. He's definitely getting some shine at school, I'm sure. And I hear that a lot of these kids go to school together, whether they're on the Knights or the Bell Warriors teams. So they're all coming together. And you know what? I remember being in high school, going to Sir Robert Borden and having Myers and Bell Warriors players. And that was part of the fun, is coming back and talking about the games that happen on the weekend. So I just think coming out of the pandemic, like football is, like we said, just like pumping in Ottawa. We have these Southern Ontario teams coming up, the champions to play. Things are good, and it's fun to be part of this community and part of football right now.
Absolutely. And Russell, but before we kind of wrap this up, Russell, I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the rest of the season, covering the CAFA for the first time and seeing all these great rivalry games. What are your thoughts on this league as a whole, as kind of a new fan of it and someone new to covering it? What are your kind of thoughts from a grand scheme of things?
So yeah, as you guys know, I'm not from the area, so where I'm from, there isn't really much football going on. Like, I don't even think there are any teams where I'm from. A pretty small town on the Quebec side. But I mean, it's really cool. It's really cool to see the amount of work that goes into all the coaches and the parents, and just how seriously all the leagues are taken. It's a big thing. Like, all the standings and the wins, and I very much enjoy tracking the stats and looking and, who do I think is the best team? Who's going to win this game? Who's going to win that game? And going back to our talk about the Quebec teams taking on the Ontario teams in a Fall Cup, I think as someone who is from the province of Quebec, I think that would be an absolutely great rivalry, and I think that would bring a lot more fans and a lot more attraction to the league as a whole, and I think it'd just be an overall great thing. But yeah, I've had a great time covering the league, doing this with you guys. It's just been a great time overall, meeting the players and such.
Yeah, Russell, I would go back to the TYSN YouTube and just search Interprovincial Bowl in kind of the channel, and you get to see some of the stuff that's been happening, like whether it's Shadowgay versus Myers Riders, or the Eagles played
South Shore,
South Shore Mustangs, North Shore Mustangs. It is pretty cool. I think that should still exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fellas, I really appreciate everyone joining us here today and for another episode of the Touchdown Ontario NCAFA and OFFL Roundup this time. Just to close out, I wanted to say shout out to the varsity division on Friday night for having another great event and having everybody out. Bel Air and Canada both got the wins there, so they're both 2-0, the two championship teams from last season. Pretty sure they'll be playing each other this Friday night, so that's not a game that you'll want to miss. Make sure you get out to that football game this Friday at the Sportsplex. It's the place to be every Friday night to watch some of the best football in the city and have a great event and a social gathering overall. But yeah, I'll throw it to both of you guys for your final thoughts here as we wrap up. Jesse, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts heading into the weekend?
Let's get this talk going about the Quebec Bantam Football League, Quebec Midget Football League. It's not too late. Let's get that going. And then also, it's just great to hear from Darren and having those teams come on board. So we're hitting kind of the fun point here where things, our feet are under us and the league is happening, and it's going to be a fun finish to championship week in November.
And Russell, what do you think, buddy? Do you think the league is going to hold up strong here, and we're going to see some better matchups going forward?
I do actually. I actually have an anticipated matchup for the week, and that would be the South Ottawa Mustangs taking on the Canada Knights. As we know, the Mustangs just came off their first loss, kind of a close loss, probably a little bit bittersweet for them. And the Canada Knights, who after losing week 1 to the now best team in the league, the Myers Riders, who are 4-0, and they lost in overtime, so super close match, they haven't allowed a point in their last 2 games. They're undefeated since that first week, haven't allowed any points. They're taking on a Mustangs team who just lost. Maybe, they're down in the dumps a bit, a little bit of a confidence not there, and maybe they can take advantage and pull off an upset win. So game's happening on Friday night, so that's my most anticipated matchup for the week.
Love that, Russell. We'll actually have some coverage of that game. The great Wanda Keenan will get out to that game and take some pictures and grab some videos from that game because, like you said, it was a highly anticipated matchup. Jesse, that's taking place, I want to say 7:30 on Friday at Calidar. So if you want to get out to that game and check that game out too, I mean, obviously you got the varsity division, but there's some competitiveness going around. What game should we go watch this Friday night? There's a lot of good football happening. Whatever you pick, thank you for supporting the NCAFA. Thank you for supporting this show. A lot of eyeballs and a lot of likes and a lot of views on our last episode, so people are really starting to enjoy this weekly show with the three of us and Darren. We'll have some more special guests coming on throughout the year, but I think that just about does it. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Russell Silverson, Jesse Card, I'm Devin Gilmore McNeil. Thanks for watching Touchdown Ontario episode 3.
TYSN would like to thank Area 51 for its support of the Touchdown Ontario program.